Welcome to Pondering Play and Therapy,
where we set out to explore the importance of play in our everyday lives and how this can also be therapeutic. We'll be discussing our own experiences in the hope that others may ponder play in their own lives too.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Pondering Play and Therapy with me, Philippa, and this week my guest is Vicki Fletcher, and she is the owner and founder of Little City UK, a mobile role play centre for under fives. Originally started in 2017 after the birth of her second daughter, and with a desire not to return to corporate life. Little City became an alternative toddler group to soft play, music or phonics classes for local children. And since 2017, the business has franchised, and Little City has now 35 branches across the UK. In 2024, they welcomed over 100,000 children into the city, offering pay-as-you-go events for local families, weekend parties, and weekday school workshops for preschool up to year one age children. The city is aimed to be role-play adventure for all and can be easily adapted for children with additional needs or mobility concerns. Little City is a place where children can be whoever they want to be, all whilst modelling and playing things they see in everyday life. They can be Spider-Man in a mini supermarket or dress up as a police officer and arrest the princess in a Three Bears pretend cafe. I really want to go here. All whilst riding a pretend motorbike if they wish. Cities host a range of interactive, high-quality, predominantly wooden toys and resources that every child can recognise and enjoy. Every child loves to serve their parents with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea at the Little City. They really can just test out roles, behaviours and games they see in the everyday real world. Vicky's also a mummy to two daughters, now 9 and 8, has a boisterous teenage dog called Neville, and is supported by her husband Andrew, who she says has a real job and doesn't play with toys all day. I think, Vicki, it sounds like you have a pretty busy job and life. So welcome to this episode. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. It's good fun. I won't lie. It's more fun than sitting in an office every day, for sure.
So, have you always been interested in play? So growing up, were you a kid who had all the imagination and got all your dressing up stuff out? What's play like for you as you grew?
I have no background in children and learning or anything like that. But as a kid, I was very much into my Sylvanians. I was small world play. But I was also, there's a whole story going on behind them. Like Mrs. Mouse is coming to the supermarket and we're doing all this. And I was really into that. I was definitely into my Barbies. And we were having games, I'm sure, with my brother and friends in the garden. Everyone have a role and you're going to do this and then we're going to do this. And I definitely see my kids doing that now as well. I think whether they get that from me or my husband. But I was not necessarily creative, but there was a story behind everything. There was a world. And I liked real life things. I do remember going, I wish I was a grown up. And I know lots of kids do. So I think there's that element as well, that I was the kids at the Sylvanians, they go into the shops and they're having babies and they're getting married and things like that. That was my world.
So the Sylvanians are like little mice, little people, a bit similar to role-playing things that what you've turned Little City from.
Yeah, definitely. I've got vintage Sylvanians now. They're 30 years old. My children are playing with them. It's great. But yeah, there's a mouse family, there's an elephant family, there's a rabbit family. And yeah, we will be acting out what they're doing. And I was very lucky. I was a very spoiled child. I had the house and I had the tree house for them and they had a caravan and all that kind of thing. So I was fully into that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Same with Barbies and Cindy's and stuff as well.
Okay. And as you went into the teenage years, how did play develop for you then?
Do you know, I don't know whether I played as much as a teenager. I know I was still playing later than possibly some of my peers. it would have been something that I was still playing with at home and not telling people at school that's what I'm doing and that's what I still like doing. But I think I was then into more games and love a board game or loved doing something in the garden, hanging out, playing, doing something, but it was more grown up, as it were.
Yeah. And when you had your daughters, how did those experiences of that early play influence how you played and interacted with your daughters, and what did you notice?
So when I had the girls, I think I forgot. I think we do. I think if I'd gone in a normal job, in a normal world, I'd been to university and got a job and did the whole single life thing. You forget how to play. And having them, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. What do I do? And it was really interesting. So my husband's family and his mum works with children, works in nurseries all the time. So he's always been around that. So he instantly knew what to do and to be silly and to interact with them with silly toys and give voices to the animals and all those sorts of things. And I watched that and I was like, oh, yeah, that's what the kids like. That's what they like doing. And then my eldest daughter got a bit older, so she was about 18 months old, we were spending all our time serving cups of tea, and someone gifted her a doctor's set that they found at a car boot sale. And this was life. This was like we were constantly being doctors for all our toys. And I was told to lay down on the sofa and that kind of thing. I was like, oh, this is what I like doing. This is my kind of play. I'm less imaginative now, and I'm less, let's give voices to things. That's not, I don't know, I don't enjoy it as much. But give me a craft, give me a role play, because I know, and then the girls really took to it as well. They were all over it. So that's how it's evolved, definitely for me. And I found it fun as well. I could see them learning and the cogs going, and they'd mimic you. They'd see something, we'd been in the cafe or the supermarket, and then they were doing it at home. And I was like, oh, you watch me all the time, don't you? And you don't realise how much they are watching you at all.
Yeah. And did you keep your Sylvanian families, and did you share those with your girls, or are they precious now?
No, so they're very expensive. But no, so actually my mum had moved house a couple of times, and each time she's like, can we give these to you? There's boxes and boxes of them in the loft. And I was like, all right, fine. So we've moved with my husband several times before we had the girls. And then it got to the time I was like, I'm going to crack these out now. It's time. It's time. They can come out of the loft and be played with. And I must say, it's only in the last couple of years that they've really appreciated them. And then so my youngest daughter now got really into them in the last summer holidays, to the point that she saved up pocket money to play with them. My big girl is less into the small world play. She likes a mud kitchen, and then she'll write a menu. She's very much academic. There's got to be a structure to it. I'm going to do a mud kitchen, there's a cafe, and there will be a menu, and you can only choose things off this menu. But my youngest is now, Sylvanians, full on, lays them all out, has to be very particular where everything goes, very similar to what I used to do as well.
And that's just made me think, you noticed a difference in play as your children grew. So when they're babies, they need one type of play, and then and what did you notice kind of having two girls? Were they different in the way that they developed and their interests, or were they the same?
So it was really funny. So they both went to a childminder when I went back to my normal job before I started Little City. And the childminder, I picked them up that evening, and she was like, have you got any babies at home, like dolls? I was like, well, no, we've got the usual stuff. We have a bit of Duplo and all those sorts of things. So your girls are obsessed with dolls. I was like, are they? I hadn't played with them or thought about it. And that's all they've been doing at the childminders. And so that was really interesting, because they're so close in age. They then really took on babies and dolls. It was a very stereotypical girl thing. Definitely, as they've got older and changed, they love doing things together. But my youngest is very much more into craft. She's very particular and precise. And now the Sylvanians, it's all got to be in its rightful place. My big girl is very logical. She is Lego heavy at the moment. But if they're playing together, they will reenact things around. They love playing schools, which I find fascinating. Like, you've been at school all week. Why do you want to reenact this? But they are. One's a teacher and the other one's not. And what I found really interesting as well is, because school are so open and chatting about it all the time, about neurodiverse children. So one of them will take on a role, and not in a derogatory or nasty way at all, but they're like, well, I'm autistic. So they act out a child in their classroom who might be autistic. And it's very sweet. It's very nice. And then they pretend to be the teacher and they'll behave differently as the different classroom. And I find that really fascinating. They want to model it and play it and try it out. It's really fascinating. But they do have distinct differences, but also they do come together and play quite nicely as well. So I'm lucky. I'm very lucky.
I suppose processing the information they're getting from the outside world, isn't it? So people
Definitely.
aren't all the same, and there's a name for some differences, and it's that thing that it's okay to interact differently with different people.
Yes.
Because I guess when you're very little, there's a thing about fairness, that everything has to be the same. And then there's a developmental change where children can begin to conceptualize it can still be fair, but different.
Yes. Yeah, they're definitely. It's really interesting watching them or hearing them playing. So I don't get involved in the school play, but the one child who takes on the role of the teacher will treat. So there's only two of them, but the second child is being all the children in the classroom, and they'll go, well, now I'm Justin, for example, and he's the autistic one, so he will behave slightly differently as the girl that's taking on the role of the teacher is doing something, and then they'll change roles. Like, no, I'm Rosie now, and then that Rosie is a bit different completely, and it's really, really fascinating how they adopt those different personalities, but also the teacher role changes as well. Yeah, it's really interesting. But then they get into full hardcore lessons and they do their phonics in that classroom. It's pretty, they get marks and merits and all sorts. Great fun.
And what age were your children when you started Little City? And what made you start Little City with two young children?
So I'd gone back to work. My youngest was just under a year when we started Little City. So 2017. And I think Instagram told me I'm a slave to marketing, but Facebook or something. There was a role play centre up in Norfolk, and I saw that. I was like, oh, that looks really fun. Now, because they'd been playing babies and doctors at home, I was like, no, they'll love that. Let's give that a try. A friend up there, and I was like, let's go and meet there. Let's go and test it out. It'd be really cool because I couldn't find one locally, and so we went and had to try it out. And the girls had a blast. It was brilliant. Yeah, just fully interactive, good 2 hours worth of play. Really loved it. And I came home and I was like, there must be something local to me. There must be. And there wasn't. So I was like, well, I could do that. Could I do that? And I was, I don't have any experience in this. Could I do this? And I said it to my husband and he was like, well, you could, but that's a lot of money. You have to take on a unit. You have to take on a permanent site. That involves staff. That involves building it. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. And I looked at other franchises. There's a couple others in the south of England who do static, what we call it, permanent role play centre, and they franchised it. But again, that was hundreds of thousands of pounds. I'm not gambling my mortgage on this or anything like that. This could not work. So parked it. And then I was chatting to a friend, and one of my friends, well, why don't you do it mobile? Could you do it mobile? Just get a van and do it from there, and you can set up and you can run around with it. And I was like, no, that won't work. And then, of course, I'm going to all these groups with the girls, the music classes and the phonics classes, which are great. I think there's definitely, my girls got so much from these classes. And then I was like, well, there must be something different because I personally am not a fan of soft play. So I find them overstimulating, noisy, and there's no windows. I find them really quite draining. Kids obviously love them and get a bit hyper. So this mobile idea stuck with me. And then I said to my husband, I was like, could we do it mobile? And he didn't say no at this point. I think that's the key point is he didn't say no. And then we came up with this plan he helped me build this framework out of wood in the garden, in the shed, and how it fit together and how I could pull it apart and put it back together again. And that's, literally how it started. So we opened in October 2017. Alice was 13 months old, my youngest. So there's still videos somewhere of me with her on my back, just setting up the city, running these sessions, her asleep in a pushchair, all that kind of thing, because they had to come with me. I was still doing my normal job and Little City around it just to see if it would work or not, if it was worth the gamble.
What is Little City then? Just so you have this idea and you're going to go mobile. So what is it? What are you going to bring to the world?
Well, so it's essentially a role play centre, all the under fives.
Just for some people, it's that interaction where you pretend to be somebody else. So when they're playing schools, that's role play.
Yes.
But you are taking some equipment to help encourage that kind of pretending to be somebody else or something else in the world.
Absolutely. We have a framework, essentially, which creates the world that they're going to play in, and it's all at the children's height. So we have a mini supermarket, a mini cafe, a doctor's surgery, a vet's, a garage, post office, all the things that the kids see every day in their lives that they can't normally get involved with. In the supermarket, they're stuck in the trolley, or they might be helping walk you around, but generally they can't do a lot of it. In the cafe, you've got to sit down nicely and you've got to wait for your drink to arrive and that kind of thing. They go to the post office all the time. They might post the letters, but they can't put the stamps on or anything like that. So role play is really very much giving them the opportunity to do it for themselves. But all the toys and equipment are laid out at their height. There is nothing out of bounds. So some of it might be real world things. So, for example, in the emergency services area, loads of kids love being police officers, fire officers, but we've got real old telephones that they won't see nowadays. Not really, but they all know what to do. And they're pressing the buttons. We've got old laptops that are not plugged in or anything that they can throw around, but they're practicing because they've seen their mummy or daddy on a laptop or a computer. So and then the backdrops, the grid layout that we have, it's abstract to explain without images, but they're designed so every bay the child goes into, and it's very photogenic, but it's bright, colourful backgrounds as well. So it sparks their imagination. So when they walk into the supermarket bay, it looks and feels like they're in a supermarket. There is a counter, there's a trolley, there's a till, there's some shelves, there's some fruit and vegetables, there's a bag, and they can do everything that they might want to do. They can open the till and get the card out or the money for their parent or carer. There's a supermarket shopping list, with a bit of phonics on there, but imagery, and they go, okay, find me an apple. And they find an apple on the supermarket shelves. So they're very much doing it themselves. And the same in the post office, they can post the letters. It's all at their height. That post box is not too high for them. They can open the post box and take the letters out again. So there's all those gross and fine motor skills that they're practicing as well. But they just think they're having a grand old time posting letters.
Fantastic. Yes. Do parents get to play in there with them, or do you sit and have a cup of coffee and let the kids go and play?
No, ever since we started, I'm very encouraging that parents are getting involved. We know you're time poor as a parent. When you're at home, you don't get a chance to play necessarily. You've got to put the washing machine and go answer the door. You've got to do the washing up, something like that. So at Little City, we do put chairs. We use village halls and community centres and scout huts and that kind of thing for our events. We do put chairs around, but not many. And that's on purpose. If someone needs a chair, of course, please have a chair. You've got to breastfeed your tiny baby, or I've got a mobility issue. Please have a chair. But we put less chairs out to encourage the parents and carers to interact with the kids. So we've got, again, loads of images and lovely. The parents just sat on the floor being served a cup of tea or pretending to have a broken arm in the doctor's surgery. And the child's fully into it. They've put the doctor's jacket on. They've got the pretend glasses on. And you see the parents and carers and grandparents, so many grandparents come through, having those conversations with the kids. And the kids are big. It almost sounds bossy, but they're like, no, you're going to do this now. And this is what happens. And because they've seen it and watched it, they know there's a sequence of things that are going to happen in that area as well. So they're just practicing and testing it out and giving it a whirl. It's really funny to see. And no child interacts with their parents or carers the same. It's really, in the 7 years that we've been doing it, every child approaches it slightly differently. No one does it the same. And I love that as well. Some will be whizzing around as Spider-Man because, I'm going to be the robber or whatever it might be. But there are others that are very particular about it and they're lining it all up and they're piling the shopping. Very, very different. It's fun.
And do you think the children get more out of it when the parents are engaged than if
massively.
the parents were sitting around?
Yeah, for sure. You do have some children who are clearly in their own zone and want to get on with it and do it themselves. But in other times, you see the enjoyment and the joy that they get from serving mummy a cup of cake and she go, oh, that's delicious, or it's too hot, or something like that. They absolutely love it. And it just starts those conversations with the parents as well. Because then when they go out into the big wide world, they can say, oh, do you remember when you did that at Little City? And we have so many parents say to us, I didn't know that one of the funny ones, we have a laundrette in some of the cities, and there's an ironing board, pretend ironing board and an iron in there. And all the parents say, I don't do any ironing at home. How do they know how to iron? And the kids just stood there merrily ironing, no problem. And that in itself is where have they picked this up? And they'll show them. And the kids know how to empty the washing machine in our pretend laundrette because they've watched their mum. And then the mum's like, well, I can get them to do that at home. Yeah, why not? Let them do it.
How often do you run? And how widespread are you? Because where are you based?
So I'm based in Suffolk, so I'm on the North Essex-Suffolk border. So I've got a branch who covers Suffolk, and I've got a branch who covers North Essex, which is Colchester. So the franchisees have quite big geographical areas. We're based on postcodes, so they have their own territories to run in. They're all mobile. They all have their own vans and all their own kit and everything. So they'll visit every venue once every 3 or 4 weeks. So they're always in the local area. All our sessions are pay as you go. So there's no termly fees with it whatsoever. The parents can just turn up, book on, and come and have a play. And then they go away again after an hour and a half. So it's short, sharp sessions, but we also know that children's attention span can't last that long. Some people are like, oh, why isn't it 2 hours long? Because of the age range, we know that they get tired, but they also can start becoming a bit over boisterous, which is when we know that more tantrums and things might happen as well. So we've tested it out with the time. It's not all children, of course, but some it can be a little bit overstimulating. Okay, right, it's time for a break. It's time for a reset kind of thing.
So how long does each session last then?
We do an hour and 15 minutes, so 75 minutes per session. A little leeway around there as well, because some people are going to be late. They've got kids to get in the car or out and about. 75 minutes is a really good time. And then birthday parties, we do 2-hour slots for birthday parties, because of course they have cake and stuff in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, birthday parties, because the kids know each other. They play more interacting with each other. So the sessions in the weekday, 75 minutes just with a parent or carer, childminder, grandparent, whoever, they're more interacting with the grown-up that's there. They play socially, but anti-socially. It's really interesting. We don't know that child next to them. They'll stand next to them, but they're doing their independent thing. They won't do it. But party hires and school workshops, they'll interact more with each other because they know each other. And they might have been a couple of times before. So there's a bit of safety there. It was like, okay, I don't need my mummy there all the time. They're there, I'm watching them and they're at the corner of my eye, but I'm actually going to play with this child as well. So they might serve each other a cup of tea. And that's when it starts developing. You can see the change in their play.
Can you just go, you mentioned something there. They're playing socially, but anti-socially. Can you explain that? And is that what you would expect of children typically developing of the age range that you see?
Yeah, I have no experience in childcare. I don't know about the developmental stages as such. I know loosely just from observation, really. But yes, it is very much they're playing with other children in the room. And I guess that's how preschools and nurseries work as well. They are playing, but not together necessarily. They're playing alongside another child. And that's where the sharing comes in as well. I definitely see older children are more likely to share than others. So we've only got 2 trolleys, for example, in the city. We could fill a room with trolleys, but they all want the same one. Developmentally, definitely the younger ages, the 2 till 3.5 maybe, really struggle with that sharing element. But they are focused on what they're doing and with their parent or carer. As they get a bit older, again, just observing it, they're more likely to maybe talk to the kid next to them at the supermarket till, or serve another child in the cafe, or share the letters in the post box. It just seems as they get a little bit older, they're more used to other people around them and know that actually the other child will enhance my play if I let them interact with me. Yeah. But yeah, the little ones is very much, no, this is my lane. I'm going to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. So it's that, I guess it's that experience of play, isn't it, that helps them develop. Cognitively, they are developing a little bit more so they can understand that I am going to get that back. I can share it with you. And the likelihood is I can have another go later. Whereas maybe when you're 3 or 2.5, you think that you might never get it back again. So you have to hold on to it really, really
very
tightly.
much so. You have the little ones who are just like, no, this is mine. And they're holding on to it for the whole session. And that's okay. That's absolutely, we've got no problem with it whatsoever. We have to just encourage them as much as we possibly can to play as well. And it's really interesting that the families that come regularly, and we have had families that have come all the way through, the parent might be on their 3rd child that's come to Little City. You'll see that the first few visits, they will go to the areas that they recognise. That's always the cafe, it's always the post office. They might not even explore the vets or the garage because that's not what they're used to. It's not what they recognise as easily. They come 3 or 4 times, and every time they play with something else in a different way. And you can just see it's their confidence, but it's their learning as well. And I find that really fascinating. And it's lovely to see for the parents as well. We'll have some parents say, oh, look, we didn't even play with everything. I said, don't worry about it. Come back next time, because they've seen it all and they've watched the other children play. They might give it a go next time. It's about just observing to start with for a lot of children.
And what about if you've got children that maybe get a bit fizzy or a bit muddly and they might be struggling? How's that managed?
So our sessions are limited, the amount of children. So we'll only ever have 22, 25 children maximum playing at any one time. That's ensuring that we've got enough toys and resources for everybody and enough space for everybody as well. Because we know there's some that like to run around and there's some that isn't. In a couple of the cities, we've got chill out areas. We've done blackout tents and things before, little bean bags and things for them to have a reset. For other children, we might, and I know my team are really good at this, of keeping an eye on it. They might see a child becoming maybe a little bit uncomfortable or distracted and finding the toy that they were actually really interacting and taking it away out of the city and giving it to them so they can sit quietly on their own with that toy or a piece of equipment with their parent, guardian, and just enjoy it quietly by themselves. And we also we know we have other children who just might find it a bit overwhelming. Still with 20 kids in the room, it can be a bit noisy. We had, for example, a little girl at one of our Christmas sessions. She'd played before and she'd been a few times before, and she came with her dad this time instead of her mum. And you could tell he was ready to go. He was like, yeah, let's go. He was really up for it. But she was just not. She was crying on his shoulder and that kind of thing. So we had a couple of Christmas books in our Christmas area. Like, do you want to go and sit down and read a book and sit down with Daddy? And it just took 5-10 minutes for her to just sit quietly reading a book with her face just peering over, just having a look what other children do. 20 minutes later, she was back in. She was interacting and stuff. So it's very much, we realise that every child is different and we'll try and adapt it as much as we can.
That regulation can be quite hard. And I guess you've got children with different energies. So if you've got children who are a little bit more bouncy or a little bit more energetic, how is that managed? Or do you need children who can play just gently with the toys?
We've got lots of bouncy children as well. They're the ones, we've got ride-on toys. So they're the ones that are whizzing around on the ride-on toys as well. If they're into dressing up, not every child's into dressing up. There's a whole host of things. And we do find that they are the ones that are more likely to go, yeah, I'm going to be a fireman today and I'm going to chase someone around with a walkie-talkie. So there's a full range. You've got the quieter one, and then you do have the ones who've got big energy, who are there and springing around and doing stuff. And that's absolutely fine too. We've got big enough space for it. We just have to regulate if there are crawlers or ones that are less confident on their feet, just to make sure that they're safe as well. But it's funny, I don't know, my team might say something different, but I find that they come in very bouncy and full of energy, but give them 5-10 minutes to just see where they're at and see what else is going on. And then they start going, oh, actually, I'm going to go and play with that. We very rarely will have a child who is chucking stuff around or is really not enjoying it, kind of thing.
When I think back at my child going to soft play, like you say, I just never would, because he had so much energy. To take him somewhere that he was then really overstimulated with noise, with sound, with all those sorts of things was just a disaster. And we would end up leaving with some either injury or tears or something, because it was overstimulated. And actually, he did have a really good imagination. So playing is something that's really good. But because he needed, like you say, to move a little bit in order to be able to regulate and familiarize himself with things, then he could have gone and played. But not having so much structure as some of the groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it seems like Little City has got a kind of, it allows a bit of both. It allows the structure of, actually, this is the space you've got to play in. These are what you're going to play with. This is the way we're going to play. So it's quite containing in that way, but it's also allows enough freedom and imagination that they can flit from. If they see they're doing the kettle in the cafe and then they notice the fireman's hat, they can just put the kettle down and go straight to the fireman's hat.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I think is the beauty of it. You see the children doing it all differently. I love it when you see they've been in the cafe and they've had a 10 cake or whatever. And then they take that into the fire station and they're tapping away at the laptop with the cake next to them. And it's like just taking it for a snack. Oh, yeah. I think for me as a parent, one of the reasons I set it up as well is because I had two small children, very close in age. There's only 17 months between them. I found it really difficult to take my big girl to a toddler group when I've got a newborn baby with me as well, because I can't have her sat on my lap when I've got to hold the new. For me, it didn't work. I loved those groups. That I think they're fantastic. But when they were especially little, I needed somewhere that I could go that wasn't soft play, because soft play was too vast. I can't see my big girl the other side of the room. And I'm hoping that we're welcoming a safe space enough at Little City that wherever your child is in the developmental cycle, and if you've got a small child, you've got a baby, you can feel safe and contained enough. You can always see your child. They can't escape. We've never had any escapees. They're always in the room, but they can go off and do their own thing whilst you need to feed your baby. Or you can do a bit of both. We've had mums and dads sat holding a tiny one and playing with that on, and then they might have a bigger child playing around the corner as well. It's for everybody, wherever they're at and whatever they want to do. And they can choose. We've got some children like, no, I am here in the building site and I am not moving because I'm going to build this tower. Absolutely. Focus on it. Do it. But if you want to move around, you totally can as well. And the team, and when it was first set up, the real ethos was if we see a toy or equipment that's not being used anymore, we return it to where it belongs. And the amount of customers and parents who say, oh, you spend your whole time tidying up. But the reason is, so when the next child comes to that area, the resources are there for them to interact with, and it's in roughly the right place. So they can see it and go, oh, yeah, I associate that with the doctor's surgery. Okay, great. That's what that's for. So that's really important for us as well.
Oh, fantastic. And what about children who maybe are neurodiverse, maybe with autism or fetal alcohol syndrome, or maybe you've got some special needs or physical needs? Would they be able to access the Little City?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My team and I've worked so hard on this. It's like, what else can we do to make this accessible for those families? So we know that some children or might not even be diagnosed or anything like that, or on their journey to having support, that some parents go, oh, I can't take them there because they scream. That's their way of regulating, or they might spin or anything like that. And we're like, it's absolutely fine. There is no judgment whatsoever. If your child throws a tantrum halfway through the session, that's okay, because everyone in this room's child has a tantrum. So don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. What we have done to counteract that is we've done send specific sessions.
Okay.
So we'll do them, and we've again listened to feedback. We won't do them first thing in the morning or the last thing of the day. We'll try and do them at a sociable time, because we know that that's a better time for those families. It's accessing those families though, because they all still might have that worry about going into community spaces. But we say to them, bring your child, regardless of what needs they might have. They're reduced class sizes. So there might only be 15 children playing that morning. But all of you in this room have got a child who might be neurodiverse. And so you're all in the same boat. So there's no judgment whatsoever. And that's when we will put out the extra fidget toys or the blackout tent, everything like that. So we'll make it nice and secure for them. For the children, my team are fantastic at this. They work with local community groups. So in Colchester, my team member there, she's worked with the local Down syndrome group. So she'll run sessions, it's all families in the local area, all these children with Down syndrome. And what we've tried to do as well is to reflect the children. So we've got toys that have got cochlear implants, and we've got dolls who might have Down syndrome, and we've got crutches, and we've got wheelchairs and things. So the children can reflect and play. And really happily, we had one little boy the other day who has Down syndrome, played with the Down syndrome. It's like me. And for the children who are neurotypical, can see and experience that as well. And it becomes normal for them. And we've been very lucky to go into lots of SEND schools. So we've worked quite a few across the country now. Is we might be in there for a full day, and we might have children who are 3 or 4 at the preschool end, right through to 16, 17-year-olds interacting and playing at Little City. And that has been the most rewarding mornings of my life. I won't lie, they are amazing. Because of the nature of Little City, we can pull it apart, we can move the furniture around, we can make it fully adaptable for those children in the room. So we'll take the lead from the teachers and the TAs. So are those bits too small? Have we got children who are likely to mouth things in here? Okay, great, that kind of thing. in the cafe will reduce the amount of toys and equipment we'd have in there, because we need to keep it really simple. You keep it really straightforward for those children that might need it. So we'll adapt it to whatever audience we've got in the room. If we can, we will absolutely adapt it. And
You've talked about different abilities, diversity. Do the toys and the items reflect different cultures, different,
Yeah, from the very beginning, from my experience, I wanted it to not be gendered. So as far as possible, we don't have pink things, for example, for girls and blue for boys. That was really, really important for me. So the backdrops of all of Little City are not neutral colours. They're bright, bold colours, but then nothing is gendered. There's no, this is the boy area, this is the girl area, that kind of thing. In the hairdressers, we've got little mini pretend hairdressers. I encourage the teams to always have different hair types. We've got the mannequin heads for the children to play and do their hair in. So we'll always aim for that to be very much prominent in there. So different tools that you might need in the hairdressers for different hair types as well. And we've got a man with a beard now, which is quite scary as a mannequin head. So they can just see the different types. And some of the mannequins have got curly hair, some have got afro hair, they've got really straight hair, all the different variations. And the same in the doctors will have different skin tones for the dolls and the babies, as well as maybe abilities, disabilities. We've got different foods in the cafe, different food in the supermarket. Would try and make it as accessible, again, as diverse as we possibly can. It depends what's on the market. We are restricted sometimes by the suppliers and what's around, without it being tokenistic. I think that's my concern as well. It's got to be right. And we'll adapt it for different areas. So we've chatted in those communities that might not celebrate Christmas. We might not do Christmas sessions in that area. We'll do a winter session. And then also thinking about the venues that we hold our sessions in. Church halls are brilliant. They're nice big spaces, that kind of thing. But we know that some communities can't go into that church hall because it's a Church of England or something like that. So we have to be aware and reflect our audience and reflect our local customers. But that's different in every area of the country. Devon is white, British, middle class. Central London is completely different and completely diverse. So we've got to change for that.
You talked about birthday parties and things like that. So can people say, we'd like you to come and do this event for us? How do they do that, Vicki?
So they just contact us through the website. Birthday parties are huge for us. They're a bit nuts. And this was something I didn't expect when I first started the business, is birthday parties. But we easily could do birthday parties all day, every weekend, every Saturday and Sunday. So in that instance, the customer says, we want to book a birthday party. We say, okay, where do you want us to come? As long as we've got a big enough space. We're not fans of going to people's homes because things can get damaged and that kind of thing. We like a hall or a venue of some description. And then we set up the city as we would normally. But for parties, we do a big red ribbon around the city. The child cuts the ribbon to open their city. We've got crowns, we've got thrones, they're in charge. They're in charge for the day. And they're just, they're fun. And then the parents bring cakes and balloons. And sometimes we might have a real princess visit, or Bluey turns up or someone like that. So they have 2 hours. We're not entertainers as such, but we'll compare. But I think with parties, unlike a bouncy castle or a soft play party, the kids aren't getting hyper, and then you give them sugar and they're going even wilder at this party. It's a more sort of mellow. They do get hyper, they get excited, but it's a constant energy rather than a ups and downs. And it appeals to all different ages as well. So if you all have got a second birthday, but you've got friends, you've got 4, 5, 6-year-olds, everyone can play and they all interact and play with each other. So that's really nice. You have the mixed age groups at birthday parties.
That's really
and then we do corporate events too. So
that was my next thing. So I will put a link in the description of this to the website. That's where people will get in touch with you. So corporate events, tell me about that.
So we've done a couple of those. We've got a couple more this summer, and that's big family days that corporations and businesses might have that need some entertainment for the little ones. So we will set up in their venue, and the kids can just come and play as their parents are interacting and chatting to their work colleagues.
So this is like a big organisation or something like that thinks, okay, we're doing a family day, we're doing a summer fete for everybody, but we need to entertain some kids. So rather than having a bouncy castle or alongside the bouncy castle, you can go and set up, and the kids can go and play in them, and the parents can go and have their barbecue or their party food and those sorts of things. I'm guessing the kids come in and out then a bit different than when they're in the hall, because when they're in the hall, the parents are playing with them there. Whereas if you're at a corporate event, it may be that the parents are chatting and the kids are coming in and out. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly it. Yes. So it's all free flow, we would call it. So that we'd always make sure there's enough staff on board. We're never left alone with the children. We're not Ofsted registered or anything like that. We're not childminders. But as long as the parents got an eyeball on the child, we're happily there. We love to play, of course. So we're more than happy to get down and be served a cup of tea or be looked after in the doctor's surgery. So that's absolutely fine by us, as long as the parents are still responsible and there. But again, the kids are free flow, move around, have a play, and then they might go and play on the bouncy castle and come back in 10 minutes' time. Absolutely fine.
So you do it in quite a lot of different ways. Are you just in the south then? I'm in the north.
Oh, no, we're everywhere. So I've got 3 branches in Yorkshire now. So I've got Sheffield, North Yorkshire, and just like Barnsley and Wakefield area. I've got a lot in the south. East Anglia is covered. That's why it's grown organically from where I'm based. I've got my lovely west team now. So I've got Bristol, Devon, Bath, just about to open in South Wales, which is really exciting. So that's been really fun. We're having everything translated into Welsh as well. So when we go to those schools, we can make sure that we're multilingual, which has been a task in itself, but really fun. And I'm really excited to see all the printed material in different language. And then we're on the south coast as well. We do Portsmouth and Sussex, a few London branches as well. Northwest, I haven't reached yet, but there's still time.
Birmingham, Derby, Nottingham, that band is not there.
Not there yet at the moment. So I've got a couple of gaps, but we're growing. I'm not planning on world domination. I want to grow the team. I want to grow the business, but it's been organic and that's enough for me. It's just me at inverted commas head office. So there's only so much I can do.
If people were interested in working for Little City, because I imagine people listening to this think, that would be one of the best jobs in the world, playing all this all day. What does that entail?
So we're a franchise, which means the team are all self-employed, but they've bought into the business, and it's a 5-year license to run Little City in your postcode area. So that can only happen if there's not a Little City already, because obviously I've got a team member there. So yeah, if we have anybody coming Nottingham, Northampton, West Coast, or even Manchester area, it's geographical. Everyone has their own territory and they're exclusively running Little City sessions in that area. So in that area, you can be working your weekday sessions in the community, pay as you go, schools, parties, corporate events, whatever comes along. The team are completely self-employed. They choose their diaries. They run how often and whenever they want. On average, the team are working 3 or 4 days a week-ish. Some of them working 2, some are working 1 or 3, but it's all around our families and our children. So the whole team are parents in one way, shape or form. So it's very flexible. And that's the reason I set it up, is because I didn't want to go back to corporate life and didn't want to be restricted. So now I can choose when I want to go to work and not. Yesterday morning, I was at my girls' school because I could at 10 o'clock in the morning because I go and help read and that kind of thing. And so it's very flexible, but we choose our hours, when and how. But it's physical, but it's also a lot of fun.
Do you provide them with all the equipment, or do you give them a list and they have to buy the equipment?
A bit of both. So the city itself, we have registered design and it's trademarked everything, and I can tweak and change that as I wish. That's manufactured to order. I don't have loads of cities sat in a warehouse or anything like that. So as soon as we get someone sign up, we provide them with the city and the starter package, as it were. The toys and equipment, when you think of franchise, you think of McDonald's. Well, I always do. Every McDonald's looks the same. Not every Little City looks the same. The backdrops all look the same, but it's up to the individual's creativity of what goes in each area. We have a preferred list. So in the construction area, we recommend you have this, 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 and this. And these are the preferred suppliers. And we get some really good discount rates from these suppliers. But if you see something else or different that's going to be really great and interactive for that area, absolutely bring it in. My team are so creative, and we have a dressing up area, and one of them this week found a wooden pretend sewing machine. So she's put that in and put mannequins done in it, so children pretend to make the clothes in the dressing up area. And that's not set by me whatsoever. That's up to the individual. You want to invest in those resources, and the kids are loving it. It's whatever's going to work for your area.
And I guess the community that you're serving, because
exactly.
I imagine being in Manchester is quite different than being in Bristol in many ways.
Yeah. Yes, they can adapt it and change it. A lot of the things are the same, but yeah, they've got quite a lot of artistic license with it as well. And then we did bring in extra themed areas as well. So the team have put in pizza parlours. We've had a dentist set up before. We've got for Halloween, Christmas, spring, over the winter, we might have winter animals in the vets. So again, you can theme it by the season or something that's going on. World Book Day, for example, is coming up. We can go all out on World Book Day. The team have done the tiger who came to tea or the postman who knocks. Is just dress it up. Absolutely. You can make it really interactive and different for the children visiting.
Goodness. It sounds one of the most amazing things, Vicky, and I'm sure the kids and the families just get so much out of it. So thank you so much for your time. I will put a link in the description for people to be able to have a look at your website. You're also on Instagram, aren't you?
Instagram and Facebook. Yep. Little City UK on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, so people can have a follow and have a look at what you do. And yeah, how interesting.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow our podcast and click like.